So hello there, everybody, and welcome to this LDC in Action webinar. Thanks for joining us. It's a little after 8 p.m. on the East Coast and 5 p.m. here in Berkeley, so I think we'll just go ahead and get started. As some of you who joined the webinar early hopefully saw, there's some tech tips here that we just want to quickly run through. First of all, I just want to make sure that you have your audio enabled. If you don't, you can't hear me right now, so hopefully those types of people are noting in the chat window that they're having audio problems. I do think everybody looks to be okay audio-wise, but I just want to make sure that you know at the top of your screen you can click the speaker icon to enable your audio and the microphone icon to enable your microphone. But we do ask that everybody stay muted when they're not speaking. So it's okay to have your microphone enabled, but you should be muted except for points at which you might speak. So we prefer to not use the mute all feature. So I think some of my colleagues might use it if there's some static noise coming from certain participants who aren't able to mute themselves. And last tip for audio is just, as most of you probably know with these webinars, it's probably best to wear headphones or earphones of some sort if you're having any difficulty hearing very well. One more tip is, of course, you can see in your panel over off to the side who is here. This is probably the best way to communicate and take part in the discussion until the actual discussion moments happen in this webinar. So there is the chat window, which already looks really active with about 30 participants here, so that's awesome. After today's presentation, there will be, after each part of today's presentation, there's going to be a moment where we will ask for your participation. We're going to provide a discussion question after each topic that you can respond to, or you can just generally comment or ask a question related to that topic. So while Dr. Pearson's speaking, if you come up with a question or a comment that you want to add, after a few moments, there'll be a moment where feel free to unmute and speak up. Otherwise, we can specifically call on you if you just type in a question or a comment in the box, or if you use this one last feature, which is the raise hand feature. So at the top of your panel, you should see the ability to raise your hand, and we'll take that as a sign that you're interested in speaking at the next available opportunity. So in just one moment, I will show you what those 5 topics for today are going to be. And just keep in mind that we'd love to have as many of you participate at those discussion moments when those discussion questions are presented. All right, just a real quick run through of some folks who are here. I definitely won't get to everybody, but I'm really psyched to see that we have a very large turnout. I saw a couple of our Kentucky friends here. I saw Kelly and Wayne. Saw some of our good friends from Louisiana, including Sheila Banks. We're all excited because Sheila just posted a really nice blog about mini tasks, so big shout out there. A lot of our SREB friends are on the line as well, so very good turnout from coast to coast, and I'm glad that a lot of people are interested in today's topic, and I think you'll enjoy hearing Dr. Pearson speak about these things. So while we're saying that, let's just do really quick introductions. So I'm your host for today from LDC. I'm Rob Kantner, the manager of the Community of Practice, and we are so pleased to have with us today Dr. P. David Pearson. He will be our featured presenter today. Dr. Pearson is the former dean of Berkeley's School of Education and a current faculty member there at UC Berkeley. Dr. Pearson is a literacy expert who got connected to LDC several years back when he led a study of the implementation of a full module at a school in New York City. And what was uncovered from that study was the power of LDC mini tasks. And he did the specific study on 2 teachers who I don't think are on today's call, but hopefully one or both will join, but I'll give them a shout out anyway, Tim Lent and Sarah Balut. They did an LDC module on the Industrial Revolution, and David and his team did a nice study of that module and its mini tasks that ultimately led to this idea that teachers really within the LDC framework need good mini tasks, vetted mini tasks that they can take and teach or take and adapt and then put into their module or teach standalone. So that led to the creation of the LDC mini task library. So that library is obviously something that's in LDC core tools, which we'll touch on later. And David continues to oversee that work for LDC. So today, Dr. Pearson is going to run through these 5 topics you see on the screen. And as I noted, after each topic, there will be a brief moment to stop and have some discussion. So definitely let us know in the chat window hand.
Thanks.
Comments.
Contributions to the many tasks library. Glad you're here today. The first thing I want to say is that a mini task is a term we came up with because one of the things that we realized is it wasn't quite exactly skills and it wasn't quite exactly strategies, but there were these things that we wanted kids to be able to do that target a literacy skill. And in many ways, a mini task is an answer to the question, what do I do when I give an assignment and nobody in the class seems to be able to do it? In other words, a mini task is a short student assignment, usually accompanied by instruction that's designed to help measure and or develop a targeted literacy skill. And typically that targeted literacy skill is on the pathway to the teaching task, the culminating performance we want kids to be able to do at the end of our modules. A mini task targets a specific skill. It involves a product, something the students will produce. Most often on paper. could even be seen many tasks. It has a scoring guide or a rubric that sets out expectations against which the student product will be what teacher to evaluate performance and to information possible for new instructional an instructional routine for the teacher. It also often deals with pacing. It actually tied to the Common Core State Standards. They often have attachments, often examples of student work, and they also have curricular information about where they might fit in the particular curriculum of which they were a part. Here's an example of a mini task from our library. As you can see, it has a product name, and this one is evaluating numerical data. The specific skill here falls into post-reading, gathering evidence, and it's the ability to see numerical and statistical evidence as having a rhetorical function, not just a bunch of numbers on a page. Here's a prompt down here. By the way, here are the standards that it relates to. And this particular one is in grades 6 through 12, and it's not tied to a specific discipline, although often they are, as you know. And they could even be tied to a specific course if that was part of the context of their generation. It has a prompt that gets the students going. It has a scoring guide here. It consists of these two features, and you can see the beginning of an instructional strategy for introducing the mini task and the like, but that instructional strategy is actually much longer. Well, the way I like to talk to teachers about mini tasks is what they're like. They're a lot like what we have traditionally called reading and/or study skills, and if you look at the actual names of the mini tasks, often they reflect that kind of skill orientation, finding the main idea, summarizing a text segment, restating a key idea in your own words, paraphrasing, learning to take notes in a particular way. We have a lot of different note-taking strategies in our mini task library, and then if you take something like Cornell Notes, we probably have 5 different variations of that. Inferring causes or predicting effects, those could all be names of mini tasks and skills that they reference. They're often a lot like someone's conceptualization of the steps in the writing process. Writing process mini tasks are sort of more transparent to develop than the reading process ones because there are these steps in the writing process, and typically we have little lessons on how to get kids engaged in each of those. Here's just a couple from one particular conceptualization of writing. An introductory paragraph needs a hook, background information, and a claim. another one from a different conceptualization. A good argument has a claim, evidence to support the claim, and reasoning to link the claim to the evidence. Here's an example. This was from Tim and Sarah's unit that Rob referred to. This was one in which they were introducing kids to the hook, background information, and claim that's part of the introductory paragraph. And you can see here that they give an example of an introductory paragraph. They talk about the parts that are key to it. And then the kids' task in this particular assignment is to identify the 3 parts in the example above. And this is the first of a set of practice activities on identifying these features. Okay. Many tasks include a variety of things. I mentioned reading skills and study skills. A lot of people teach strategies to aid in text comprehension. Those could be mini tasks too: summarizing, paraphrasing, predicting, inferring, clarifying. If any of you use reciprocal teaching or a variation of that, the components of reciprocal teaching could constitute mini tasks. Often standards themselves can become mini tasks, especially those that fall under craft and structure. Standards 4, 5, and 6 in reading. Standard 4 is how word choice shapes understanding and interpretation of a character. And one example of a mini task that one might develop, I haven't seen this one in particular, but it's one that strikes me as an interesting one, is you have a sentence frame and you keep substituting verbs. What the character. The man crept into the room, ambled into the room, sashayed into the room, scampered into the room, leading up to an activity where we discuss the impact that word choice has on interpretation. Many tasks have different uses. The 2 most common is they often are a part of a sequence in an LDC module, each corresponding to a skill on the skills list that you put into your module. These become instructional scaffolding that leads to the teaching task. I like to call them skills you meet master on the on the way to the teaching task. You can also use them as standalone tasks to diagnose students' abilities about a skill that
This
you've
is Rob
decided
speaking, and I
is
see Jason's
important
follow-up there, which
in
makes sense. And
in your
I'll
class.
put out there that
For example,
in response
before
to what Wayne wrote
assigning
as
them a
well,
larger task or
there's a couple
assignment
of mini
that
tasks in
requires
the
them
mini
to
task
be
library
proficient with
that
that skill.
are
So, for
actually
example,
for that purpose,
if you're
constructing the larger team.
if kids are supposed to, locate evidence to support an argument that they want to make at the, in their teaching task, one of the things that might become a prerequisite for that is being able to sort out relevant
Most
from
definitely, we are
irrelevant
archiving all of this, and
read.
even if you
And that
ask a
could
question or
become
make a
a
comment that
standalone
doesn't get answered or
a mini
addressed in this
task that
webinar,
you
we'll keep the
might
conversation
actually
going after.
monitor on the way
post
to the
about that at
teaching
the end.
task.
So I think we
Also,
can look
a
at one or two
periodic
more comments if any more come in.
check-in to
Otherwise, we
monitor
can move on
students'
to our next
development.
topic when you're ready.
Hopefully, over time, kids get better at these things. So you might have a periodic little mini task on note-taking.
People just don't trust the technology.
The relevance of evidence to see if kids are better, now than they were 3 weeks ago or the like. And you can also use them to provide students practice in developing a targeted skill. Anytime you notice a lack of proficiency, or if they need a little brush up, a kind of a little instructional detour before you get back on the road to the teaching task. Now, Rob, I'm going to turn things over to you because you're the discussion leader here. Eleanor, could you say exactly what you mean by repair? I'm assuming that there are things that aren't working quite the way they should.
So I don't know if Dr. Pearson, of course, if you have anything else to add to formative assessment from your experience with LDC or from anything else, obviously add that. But I posted question 3, which is how do you use mini tasks as formative assessments or to spark reflection?
And I noticed Sheila's. Go ahead, Eleanor. Someone was going to talk. I think Sheila's post brings up another question. The issue I think is the people actually will look not only at the teaching task, but also the rubric on which kids are going to be evaluated for the teaching task, and infer, some mini tasks from that. Yeah, and I think, Renita, your comment, I think that's how we originally designed mini tasks as there are things that are on that journey you're taking toward the teaching task and the final product. Someone wants to talk, I think. I hear an open mic somewhere. Yeah. But I couldn't hear what the person had to say.
It's actually it's a technique from one of the mini tasks in the library that was added sometime recently. It's an outlining strategy.
Yeah. Leslie, did you ever get your speakers working? Of course, if you don't say anything, I suppose that
And
will
one
mean
other
that
thing I
you
noticed,
didn't.
in addition to some of the comments Renita made,
Um,
was not
okay.
just using data from mini tasks to assess her students or to assess students in general, but also, as Dr. Pearson was noting, to reflect on one's own practice. I saw she had something in there about teacher effectiveness, right? So if teachers are showing
Okay.
evidence from implementing mini tasks that they're using them for
Sure.
formative assessment under
Point number two,
most
creating
frameworks
mini
for
tasks by
teachers,
targeting
teacher
skills.
effectiveness, being able to work with
A
formative
mini
data and
task
reflect on one's own
always
practice is
starts
pretty important.
with
So it's
a
definitely a good
precisely
tool for
named and
teachers in that
defined
regard as well.
literacy skill. And it's one that the teacher intentionally thinks through, deciding upon that particular literacy skill to target. And actually, a lot of the comments that just appeared in the chat room reveal that this is a principle of mini task creation that you all have internalized. It's important to remember that content usually isn't the driving motivation behind a mini task. They really come out of the tradition of disciplinary literacy. That is, to be a reader and a writer of history, or to be a reader and writer of science, or a reader and writer of literature. These are the kinds of particular routines and skills and strategies that you need to have to render text sensible, to be able to do research on text so that you can extract information that's going to help you later on, usually in a writing task, or maybe it's a speaking and listening task, a presentation of something, and the like. Now, the good thing about mini tasks is while content isn't the driving motivation behind them,
and before we move
they
on,
eventually lead to the
Tessa
acquisition of lots of content knowledge, because they're the tools that are going to help you extract the information you need to be an effective writer or speaker.
Kind of engage them again and bridge them from
creating many tasks by targeting skills. Teachers which skills ways. As I have noted already, you can unpack the demands of the larger teaching task and see, what the component processes are. You can unpack the skills that are embedded within the targeted standards from the Common Core State Standards, reading, writing, and speaking. You can use any kind of process that helps you identify what students can and can't do well. And this includes some of the protocols that you have as a part of your LDC work, examining student work, the diagnostic protocols that you do together and the like. All of these are all sources of support to help a teacher figure out which mini task to target. So Rob, we're back to you. I noticed that Pam has a really a good source of mini task creation, and that is to look at previously scored work and find areas of common weakness, and those can become actually a target for maybe a whole class mini task that you might want everyone to be refreshed upon. And I noticed that Wayne is big on the deconstruction of the teaching task. And I'm curious to know, Wayne, whether that is the teaching task itself, your analysis of the teaching task, or does that entail examining the rubric that you're going to use to evaluate kids on the teaching task? Oh, I see Eleanor has answered that question already. Skills cited on the scoring rubric for the writing mode. Yep. Yeah, this is great. Uh, Rob, I'm hoping you can archive these chat. Have a lot of good insights in them. It might be something that people want to come back to later on. I think this must be a group of writers rather than speakers because everyone's writing down their comments, right? Yeah. Okay, let's go on then to part 3. Using mini tasks to formatively assess and reflect. And, you know, as often happens in these cases, you guys have already beat me to the punch because a lot of people have talked about the fact that that's exactly how they use mini tasks. And mini tasks can provide data about students, and they can also provide data about your own teaching, because you might give a mini task as a formative assessment and decide, well, some of these kids really need a little extra boost here. I'm going to have a special group that's going to focus on a particular mini task. Let's say it's note taking or something like that, and you might just do that with a few kids in the class. But often, in the spirit of formative assessment, you can look at the data that comes back to you and decide, well, the problem isn't so much in the learning. It was really, for whatever reasons, the way I designed the curricular activities and the instruction, it just didn't work. And it's time to go back to the drawing board and sort of reteach it for everyone. So when you use it for formative assessment, it can inform the learning and any kind of special remedial loops you might want to enact, or it can also inform the teaching. And here, that was a one-slide section.
Oh, so my question was whether those
All right,
individual practices were
We'll see if
each
anyone else
themselves
has
a mini
any more
task, part of a
responses to
larger
before we move
module,
to our
or if they
final
were
topic. What
each of those
experiences
pieces were
have
part
you
of
had
one
when
mini
you
task.
thought
I can
people are
tell
writing things down,
now
let's
that
get
it was
one more
obviously
word
part of
about
that
formative
British
assessment.
Industrial
One other
Revolution
shift.
module, right?
Question and a mini task.
The research on formative assessment is overwhelmingly positive, and that is that
write in their comments,
if you want to look at the impact it has on student learning,
that
it has
Smith is rightly
a
pointed out
greater
that you can
documented
look more into
impact.
that British
The
Industrial Revolution
judicious use
module
of
that
formative
Dr. Pearson's
assessment in the
referencing
classroom.
LDC core tools
It has
library.
a greater documented impact on student learning than most instructional interventions that we bring into schools. Helping kids, giving them close feedback, right after they do something, and giving them a strategy for improving and the like is a really, really key. Any instructional process, and as I say, the empirical evidence on formative assessment is overwhelmingly positive. Okay, I see we have some interesting comments here so far. Renita uses it to, you moved Renita's comment, so I can't read it. It's important to remember skills needed before rereading, before reading, while reading, and after, to bridge the gap. And then I was interested in Jason's comment that you might have students draft a number of, I don't know what meat body paragraphs are. Is that like meaty body paragraphs, or is that a particular technique? Yeah. Yeah, and you can see how that involves, it's a good example, Jason, of turning a mini task into a formative assessment activity.
Yeah, in 2011.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to post the final discussion question, and then I'm going to kind of quickly take us through this last topic, because presuming we might run short on time. as appears to be the case. The question is now posted in the chat window, and I'm going to just take us through really quickly the LDC mini task library. I'm not going to take us into a live demo of it. I think most people on this call are familiar with it. If you're not, definitely go to LDC Core Tools and filter the library for mini tasks. And when you do that, what you might want to do is filter it first for exemplary and good to go mini tasks. And what this is going to give you is what we kind of refer to as the mini task library. So these are all the mini tasks that teachers have contributed to LDC that have been vetted by the team that Dr. Pearson oversees here at Berkeley. So right now there's about 160 of these mini tasks in the LDC Core Curriculum Library, ones that are marked as exemplary and
assessments.
good to go.
So what I mean by a milestone
what that means is they meet this criteria that I'm putting on the screen right now. And this is something else we can be sure to share after the call. So this is a criteria that was adapted from the LDC module jurying rubric, and it just targets the things, the qualities of mini tasks that make them effective, but particularly would make them useful for any teacher, or for many teachers at least, to pick up and take and teach on their own, or to adapt and teach on their own. So if you look through the mini task library, you're going to see that many of them, after a teacher submits them, they might be modified slightly to make them publishable in the library by often removing some of the content in the mini task and putting it somewhere else in the mini task so that you can just see it as an example. Because most mini tasks, not all, but most mini tasks, if they target a certain literacy skill or a certain standard or set of standards, they're transferable to different content areas. So in addition to the mini tasks in the library that are marked as exemplary or good to go, teachers can also make their mini tasks public and just publish them themselves in the Core Tools curriculum library. And those ones just haven't been vetted. That doesn't necessarily mean there's anything different about them in terms of quality, but they're just ones that have not gone through that vetting process I described. So instead of, again, taking you through examples of mini tasks in the library, what we have coming up next, so queue up your questions for this. We'll have open questions to Dr. Pearson to close out this in a few moments. But I just wanted to highlight just a couple of mini tasks that
One of my questions would be, Rob, for Dr. Pearson. You've had such a long career in the field of literacy and also in content literacy. What has been your biggest surprises in working with the whole mini task project? The things that perhaps you
what I like about the mini task library is that I think that skills are best acquired in the context of doing something else. And the good thing about the notion of the mini task is it puts the mini task instruction in service of a broader goal. And the goal is, you have this culminating activity that you're going to do that's going to be consequential for you, right? The teaching task. And I think it's just easier for kids to see the relevance and purpose of a skill or strategy lesson when it's not just going to be something that you're doing because the teacher told you to do it. It's something that you're going to be doing. It's going to help you perform better on
I don't know if anybody else wants to speak up with a question. Otherwise, I see a few attendees are.
Consequences situates skill instruction in an authentic, a more authentic environment than often is the case when skills are viewed as these sort of external things hanging out there by themselves.
Do you have concerns sometimes about the word task being part of these types of assignments? Its association with something being forced or unpleasant for students.
We're really gearing up for elementary now, and we've brought in a couple of team members who with explicit experience in like grades 2 through 5, just to sort of start to fill in the gaps and see that area. But we really want to encourage those from our members and our participants. So let's get those elementary tasks going. Well, but task was the alternative to skill, and skills have such a checkered history in teaching reading, particularly at the elementary level, because people talk about kids being skilled to death and the like. So task and skill have a negative connotation in some circles, but they have positive connotations in others. When we talk about athletics or artistic performance, skilled performances are good. So I suppose it depends on the context. And so I think one of the tasks is that it negative connotation of skills.
And David, I don't know if you see Laura's question here as well. Just any advice on differentiation?
Could have
some say it's imperative, others say
a kind of a negative cast to it. But I get your I take your meaning, and I suppose that we would be open to other names if people have better names for them, particularly names that don't conjure up negative overtones. That would be great. But I was happier with task than I was with skill to start the whole thing. So. I suppose the only thing we could call them many things, and then I suppose that that we could be as neutral as possible. But Well, I think it's both. You can never completely differentiate, but you can at least get a lot of kids who have a sort of a common issue or a common oh, what's the right word for it? There's something that there's an important skill that they haven't mastered, and grouping them together for purposes of providing an opportunity for them to overcome that issue is I think a good idea. I think the problem with differentiation is when differentiation is forever, and so if differentiation can just be for this little routine we're gonna undertake to improve our ability to differentiate relevant from irrelevant evidence or something like that, it's not quite as
Great. And I see a few more comments in here, a lot more about
it's not
using
quite,
tests.
it doesn't carry quite the
using,
I think the
negative
negative
Louisiana in particular
feelings
has created a bunch of mini tests on their own
sometimes
that they use as a series
being
of
in
mini
the
tests that they
low
teach over
group
and over, and they
can
gather
carry.
student data so they can see
But the other
across
thing we've got to
teachers, across
emphasize is that we're
disciplines,
not doing this
how
because
those mini tests are impacting student
you're
achievement.
doing poorly. We're doing this because we want you to improve your capacity to be a successful student and on the pathway to better performance in school and aspects when you leave.
All right, I'll get right on it.
So I think that we should always
All right,
emphasize.
so I know we're a little bit over our allotted
positive
time, so I'll pause for a moment in case there
being in
are
a
a
group
few other
that's
questions
getting
trickling
just the
in
help it
from
needs.
what's being written. And while we do that, before we wrap up, just want to put this slide up so you know about our next webinar that's coming up in this series on May 27th. And of course, we will have this PowerPoint and a recording of this webinar available in the next couple of days. We'll post it on our blog. And feel free to contact me directly if you do have mini tasks that you'd like included in this library. We're going to go ahead and compile all the notes from the comment thread here, because I know there was lots of good suggestions in there, and we'd love if you directly follow up with us.
And I see Dana has this
we can also
German
keep this
an idea
alive
for
on Twitter.
a
We have
third
a
grade
hashtag that we use there for
mini
a lot of our
task. I'd
regularly
love to
scheduled
see an
Twitter
annotating
chat, so you can use
task
hashtag
at
LDC
third
chat
grade
if
level.
you
That
want
would be
to
great.
comment any further on anything here. And I'm going to post one last link in our comment thread here, which is we do have a teacher challenge going on through a Facebook group right now. If anyone's interested in sharing or joining it yourselves. But before we just sign off, I want to thank everybody. But David, do you have any last comments or any thoughts before we conclude?
No, I just want to say
Thanks,
two
everybody.
things. Number one is that Eleanor has